Previously on Ol Man Ronin.
Unless your neutral switch don't work. Yep, you can feel that wiggle. Definitely needs brakes. Tires are pretty shot. Quite a bit of dry rot on stuff. Ooh, clutch needs adjusted.
What's up, riders? Ol Man Ronin here. Welcome back to the channel. You know, a couple weeks ago we filmed a video called The Quest Continues. It was concerning a possible project bike. If you remember correctly, it was a 2003 Dyna Wide Glide. Well, did we buy it? Stay tuned. As with all project bikes, there's pros and cons. Now let's get on the motorcycle from a couple weeks ago and describe with a voiceover some of the pros and cons to that 2003 Harley-Davidson Dyna Wide Glide. The first thing I noticed on the Wide Glide was the fact that it was completely neglected, and the dry rot was prevalent everywhere. The leather accent piece down the center of the tank was toast, man. It was gone. I mean, it was so curled up and dry rotted that it would have been impossible to, you know, I would have replaced it anyways or took it off completely if I decided to get it, but, you know, it was completely dry rotted. The second thing was the tires. The front tire in particular were really dry rotted, and there was not much tread left on the back, which there was a lot of burnouts you could tell done on it. But as far as the tires, they were not safe whatsoever. And the brakes were almost non-existent. I attribute that to the fact that, you know, in any hydraulic brake, especially on a Harley-Davidson, you need to bleed the system and put new fluid in pretty much regularly. I would say at least every 2 years. I'm not sure exactly what the manual says. It may be longer than that, but I like to do it every 2 years or every 5,000 miles, something of that range, because especially with the rubber hoses that they use on a lot of the bikes, they expand and they break down. So I like to change the rubber hoses every 10,000 miles as well too, because that way you can guarantee that you've got good brakes no matter what. And I looked at the pads. The pads were gone as well too. Another aspect of the neglect and the just general non-caring of the bike was the fact that it was dropped several times on each side. In particular, on the left side, I noticed that the clutch lever had a crack in it, and also the housing on that side had a crack in it. On the other side of the bike, there was still dirt from the handlebar on the right side, where the front brake lever had encountered some kind of material from the ground. But it was pretty much definitely dropped on both sides, and you could tell it wasn't maintained whatsoever. Now I would say it wasn't the owner, the current owner's fault, because the lady that was selling the bike said that her passed away ex-husband had it, and he just didn't give a crap, and you could tell. You can notice in the video that the right side mirror was cracked, and that's a definite response from it being dropped. Also on the cables, the clutch cable was extremely tight. Yeah, it was just a matter of time before something happened with that. Also, it was way out of adjustment, if it was even adjusted at all. You know, you got to maintain that stuff, and it was not. The throttle cable, I like to say it felt gritty or grimy. You literally had to return it to idle position, and even with the return cable, you had to force it back. When you had sat it still and the engine off and you'd pull the throttle open, it would stay there, which is a definite sign of not only poorly maintained cables, but also there's possibility of spring tension in the carburetor. So there's a few things there that were really wrong with that particular system. You could tell that the previous owner poorly maintained the bike. It was very, very prevalent. Low on oil. I can imagine that the transmission and the primary were low as well too, and probably hadn't been changed in forever. So the engine, you know, it's definitely had some neglect, and you could tell by the pitting on the chrome that was on it. I mean, that bike there, the Wide Glide, was a very chromed out bike right from the factory, so you could tell with a lot of the pitting on it that it wasn't even washed or taken care of. If you noticed in the video, one of the first things I said was, well, you can feel that wiggle. Well, no, Dynas notoriously have a unstable rear end. I mean, it's part of their design, unfortunately. There are stabilizers built by different companies, but this one was extra wiggly. I mean, I wasn't even going that fast, and I went into the corner, and you could feel the back end swing, which means probably the bushings where the swing arm attaches to the engine were probably a little on the worn side. So that was a major downside for me, is the fact that it had quite a bit of wobble with not even going very fast. I would say the cons on this particular motorcycle were pretty vast. There was a lot of things that needed attention to it and just weren't taken care of. So let's talk about some of the pros. Pros, well, there's not that many, but what there was pretty significant. The engine seemed very strong. It wasn't missing and sputtering. The carburetor seemed to be working right. I'm sure it needed adjusted, and I'm sure it needed cleaned. However, it did a good job. The engine sounded really nice, despite the fact that he just had straight pipes on it, and there's probably not much back pressure left. I noticed when I would get off of it, there'd be a little growl there that it needed a little bit more back pressure. However, it sounded very strong, and even though I was very careful about going not over 60 miles an hour, because I was, hey, it was not a safe bike. It was strong. It felt good. But then again, that is a Harley-Davidson 88-inch twin cam. Those things were near bulletproof. Another factor of the front end was very stable as well too. I mean, I was cruising there a little bit at 60 miles an hour just to see how the front end would be, see if there's any wobble or anything of that nature, and it tracked straight and true. It was very, very impressive for a bike that was dropped a couple times on either side, and the fact that it was neglected. It felt nice in the front end. It was pretty good and solid. The frame, there was some rust on it, particularly under the seat. In fact, there was quite a bit of rust on it under the seat, which is another sign of leaving out in the rain and not caring. But the frame seemed to be sound as well, too. Well, you got the pros, which were small, and you got the cons, which were huge. But did we actually buy the 2003 Dyna Y Glide? Yes, we bought it. The price was right. The condition of the engine was exactly where I wanted it to be. It's going to need some work, but then the entire bike is going to need some work. I mean, we talked about this earlier about the clutch. And in fact, the clutch was in such bad shape that the cable didn't break, but since the bike had been dropped, there were some cracks in the clutch lever, and they actually broke off when I was putting it on the stand. So that's not a good thing. However, that's very easily fixed. So the message was, simply put, this will be a bike that I'll be able to work on during the winter months when there's a lot of snow and I'm not riding the Himalayan. This motorcycle is going to be completely changed. It will not go back stock. I'm still debating on whether I want to chop it or I want to bob it. But being a wide glide, I think you know the answer. All you Royal Enfield guys, don't worry, we're going to have a lot more content of the Himalayan. This build for the Harley is going to take probably a couple years. I'm not jumping into it, number one. We're going to build it slowly but surely. I'm going to strip her down to the bare frame, sandblast it, powder coat it. I haven't decided on exactly what style, if I want to do a rat style bike or if I want to do a full-blown chopper or bobber. That's still in the mix, and we got a long way to go on that one. Well, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give us a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell notification button. Make sure you share and comment. You know, I read all the comments and comment on all the comments. Until next time, ride safe and keep her on two wheels, baby.